At the family gathering, my mom said, "We all know who the real mistake is. Shame the abortion didn't work." Everyone laughed, except me. 2 days later, they got court papers. I inherited everything. Hey there. We're working hard to hit our first 1,000 subscribers. If you love true, emotional stories, hit that subscribe button. It helps more than you know. Now let's get into the story. You know we tried to abort you, right? That's what my mother said, loud enough for the whole table to hear, between bites of her overpriced steak at our annual family dinner. She didn't even flinch. She said it like she was telling someone to pass the salt. Casual, sharp, cruel. Then she laughed. So did my uncle. My aunt covered her mouth like she was trying not to giggle. Even my brother, Nathan, the golden boy, the pride of the family, smirked and said, "Mom always was blunt." The only person who didn't laugh was me. I was just sitting there, frozen, holding my fork midair, like my brain hadn't caught up to what my ears just heard. My stomach turned, and for a second I honestly thought I was going to throw up right there next to the mashed potatoes. Let me give you some quick context. I was 29, working, paying rent, living clean, minding my business. I wasn't rich, but I was doing all right. And yet, every single time I came home for one of these family things, they treated me like some sort of charity case. Like I was lucky just to be allowed back into the house I grew up in. Nathan, my older brother, he's their everything. They paid for his private college. Threw him a wedding that looked like it came straight out of a movie. He and his wife live in a 5-bedroom house bought, with a small loan from our parents. He crashes cars and gets replacements. He quits jobs and lands on his feet. Golden boy. Me? I was the oops baby. The afterthought. The punchline. They told me I should be grateful they let me stay in the house until I turned 18. Told me if I didn't get a scholarship, I'd better start applying at fast food joints. When I got into college on my own, my dad literally said, "Don't expect a dime from us. You made your bed." And I never did expect anything. But nothing quite prepares you for your own mother dropping a line like, "We tried to get rid of you." Like I'm some failed medical procedure. Like I was a mistake that never got corrected. I didn't even argue. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I just stood up slowly, placed my napkin on the table, and walked out. No dramatic speeches. No, "You'll all regret this." Just silence. The kind that makes people uncomfortable. I could hear my cousin mutter something as I grabbed my coat. Something like, "He always was sensitive." Someone else laughed again. I left the house and got in my car. Sat there with my hands gripping the wheel, breathing like I'd just run a marathon. My chest felt tight, like someone was sitting on it. My vision blurred. It wasn't just what she said. It was how normal it was to them. Like insulting me, humiliating me, cutting me down in front of a room full of people. They didn't see anything wrong with it. They never have. I remember being 8 and overhearing her tell a neighbor, "We stopped loving him before he even started kindergarten. He's not like Nathan." I remember being 12 and watching Nathan get a brand new bike for his birthday while I got socks. I remember being 16 and asking for help with college applications and being told, "You're smart, figure it out." So yeah, that dinner? That wasn't new. It was just the final straw. And the part they never saw coming? Grandpa had just died a week earlier. The one they never visited. The one they said was crazy and mean and not worth the drama. The one I'd been visiting in secret for the past 6 years. I never told them we got close. I never told them I was the only one he spoke to. I never told them he left me everything. That will was already signed, sealed, notarized, and sitting in a drawer at his lawyer's office. So while they were busy laughing at me like I was still some useless, unwanted mistake, the clock was already ticking. 2 days later, they'd find out what kind of mistake I really turned out to be. The worst part wasn't what my mom said. It was how no one thought it was wrong. Nobody stood up for me. Nobody pulled her aside and told her she crossed a line. Not one person said, "Hey, maybe don't joke about wishing your kid had been aborted." Instead, it was brushed off like it always is. That's just how mom is. Don't be so sensitive. You know she doesn't mean it. But here's the thing. She does mean it. She's always meant it. That moment at the dinner table wasn't some outburst or slip of the tongue. It was a quiet truth they've all been comfortable living with since I was born. See, in my family, Nathan isn't just the favorite. He's the only one who matters. From the time we were kids, it was clear that he could do no wrong. He got into fights at school. The other kid started it. He crashed my dad's car at 17. Boys will be boys. He failed his first year of college. He just needs time to find himself. Me? I brought home straight A's, and my dad would say, that's the bare minimum. Don't expect a trophy. I once saved up for 3 months to buy a secondhand guitar. My mom told me to stop wasting money on pipe dreams. They treated me like I was dragging the family down when, really, I was the only one trying to lift myself up. When I turned 18, they gave Nathan the guest room so he could transition into adulthood comfortably. They gave me a box of my things and told me to figure out where I was staying next. I couch surfed for months, worked in warehouses, did night shifts, took on freelance gigs. I barely slept, but I made it work. No calls, no check-ins, nothing from them, except one person, my grandfather. Now, here's what you need to understand. My parents hated him, called him bitter, paranoid, ungrateful, said he caused trouble in the family for years. So I grew up thinking he was some grumpy old guy no one wanted to deal with. He lived in a small farmhouse outside the city, and nobody ever visited him after Grandma died. But when I was 23, I ran into him at a grocery store by accident. We made awkward small talk, and he asked what I'd been up to. I told him the truth, that I was working 2 jobs and sleeping in my car some nights. He didn't say much then, just nodded, gave me his number, told me to call him if I ever needed anything. And I did. A month later, I was out of options. That night, he let me crash in his guest room. No questions, no judgment. Just left the door open and said, if you're hungry, help yourself to the fridge. That one night turned into a week, then a month, then 2. At first, I thought he was just being nice. But over time, I realized something. He knew exactly what my parents were like. He saw it long before I ever did. And he distanced himself from them not because he was bitter, but because he was done watching them treat people like trash. He never said it directly, but I could feel it. The man was quiet, but sharp. He saw everything. He never once told me to forgive them or try to fix things. Instead, he helped me build something on my own. I lived with him for almost a year before getting back on my feet. Got a better job, saved up, moved out, and still visited him every week. That went on for 6 years. We'd drink tea, talk about everything from politics to engine repair, and sometimes we just sat in silence. But the respect was mutual. He listened when I talked. Actually listened. Do you know how rare that is? Then a year ago, his health started to slip. I was the one driving him to appointments, picking up his meds, helping with the bills. Not because I wanted something from him, but because for the first time in my life, someone had shown me unconditional kindness. One day, he asked me to drive him to his lawyer's office. He didn't explain why, just said he had some things to take care of. I waited in the hallway for almost an hour. When he came out, he was quiet. We didn't talk much on the way home. It wasn't until a week later that he told me, I changed the will. It's all yours now. I was stunned. I told him he didn't have to do that. He just smiled and said, the others forgot me long before I forgot them. That was the last real conversation we had before his health took a turn. He passed away 2 weeks later, and I didn't tell anyone. Not my mom, not my dad, not Nathan. No funeral announcements, no phone calls, no family group text, because they didn't deserve to be there. They weren't around when he was alive. They didn't help him when he was weak. They didn't care, but they were going to care when the legal notices started showing up. Because Grandpa didn't just leave behind memories. He left behind land, stocks, gold, cash, and every last bit of it was mine. They thought I was a mistake. They were about to find out how expensive that mistake had become. 2 days after that dinner, the one where my mom casually wished I'd been aborted, the letters started arriving. One by one, they all got the same envelope. White, thick paper, stamped by the estate attorney's office. Formal enough to make your stomach drop before you even open it. Inside, notification of probate. A line that read, the last will and testament of Mr. Frank D. Callahan will be executed on the 12th of this month. You are being notified as a potential interested party. But they weren't interested parties. Not really. The only reason they were getting notified at all was because the law requires it when someone dies, and there's even a chance of contest. But there was no contest, because the will was airtight, notarized, witnessed, reviewed by 2 separate attorneys. It left everything, I mean everything, to me. The farmhouse, the 6 acres of land surrounding it, the retirement accounts, the war bonds he'd kept tucked away in a lockbox, a small but tidy investment portfolio. Even his 1967 Pontiac, which was basically untouched since the 80s, but ran like a dream. and all of it was left to me. No conditions, no clauses, no backup beneficiaries. Just one sentence that shut the whole family out. I leave my estate in full to my grandson, Daniel, who never forgot me. And here's the best part. None of them even knew he had passed. That's right. I didn't tell them, didn't text, didn't post anything online. There was no obituary in the paper. He'd asked for privacy in his final days, and I honored that to the letter. So imagine their shock. One day they're eating leftover roast and talking about how ungrateful I am. And 2 days later, they get legal proof that I now own every cent of Grandpa's wealth. The calls started immediately. My mom, Daniel, what is this letter I got? Is this some kind of mistake? Nathan, hey man, can we talk? I didn't even know Grandpa died. Why didn't you tell me? Even my dad, who hadn't spoken to me in years unless it was to criticize me, texted, call me. Important. I didn't reply to any of them. I just let it simmer. Because for once, they were the ones left out. They were the ones confused, scrambling, trying to understand how they ended up on the outside looking in. They'd spent years making me feel like I didn't belong in the family. Now I had the paperwork to prove it was mutual. 3 days before the reading of the will, Nathan showed up at my apartment. Just showed up. No call. No warning. I opened the door and saw him standing there in some designer coat, holding a six-pack like we were still in college. He tried to play it casual at first. Dude, it's been a while. Thought maybe we could hang out, catch up. I leaned against the doorframe. Said nothing. Then he got to the point. So, about Grandpa. Look, I know things got weird with the family, but we all loved him. He was our grandfather too. It just feels kinda harsh, you know? You keeping this all from us. That's when I spoke. You remember what Mom said to me at dinner? About wishing she aborted me. He blinked, shifted on his feet. She was just being Mom, right? I said, yeah, that's the problem. He didn't know what to say after that. I let the silence hang. Then I added, he left it all to me, Nathan. Everything. And I'm not sorry. He started to say something. Maybe an apology, maybe another excuse. But I closed the door before he got the words out. The reading of the will took place in a quiet little office downtown. Just me, Grandpa's lawyer, and a notary. No family showed up. They weren't invited. The lawyer slid a sealed envelope across the table. Your grandfather wanted you to have this after the estate was officially yours. I opened it later that night. Inside was a handwritten note. Faded pen. Stiff paper. No preamble. I always knew what they thought of you. I just didn't agree. They chose Nathan. I chose you. Spend it wisely. Or don't. Just promise me one thing. Don't waste it on people who never saw your worth. That letter meant more than the house, more than the land, more than any dollar figure. Because for the first time in my life, someone in this bloodline had seen me. Not as a disappointment. Not as a mistake. As someone worth something. And the rest of them? They were about to find out what happens when the mistake finally gets the upper hand. They couldn't just let it go. I knew at the moment the first passive-aggressive text from my aunt came in. I'm sure your grandfather didn't mean to leave the rest of us out. You should probably do the right thing before lawyers get involved. Ah, there it was. The old family favorite. Guilt-laced threats, wrapped in concern. Then my dad chimed in, finally deciding to play Father of the Year. If you had any integrity, you'd share it. This family supported you. Supported me? The same people who tossed me at 18 and didn't even check if I had a place to sleep? A week after the will was read, their tone changed from confused and offended to aggressive and entitled. Nathan sent a 3-paragraph message about reclaiming what's rightfully ours, and how Grandpa probably wasn't in his right mind anyway. That was the opening shot. Within days, I got an official notice. They were challenging the will. On what grounds? Mental incompetence. According to their claim, my grandfather must have been confused or pressured when he made the change. They wanted the court to invalidate the entire document, split the estate equally, which, in their language, meant give Nathan everything and toss me whatever crumbs are left. But here's where their plan fell apart. Fast. My grandfather wasn't just sharp when he signed the will. He had medical evaluations from 2 independent doctors within the same month, both declaring him mentally sound. He'd even recorded a video message at the lawyer's request, explaining exactly why he was leaving them out. And he didn't hold back. In the recording, he looked straight into the camera and said, "They only came around for money. They called me a burden behind my back. They let Daniel starve. Not a cent for them." That hit like a grenade. The court hearing was small, mostly attorneys and a few family members. But I showed up, sat in the back, and watched the whole thing unfold with the kind of calm I've never known before. They tried to paint me as manipulative, said I'd poisoned Grandpa against them. Then the lawyers started laying out the real timeline. The financial statements showing they hadn't sent Grandpa a dime or visited him in 8 years. The text messages we pulled from old devices, with my aunt literally calling him a rotting waste of oxygen. My mom's old emails to Nathan, mocking Grandpa for thinking the idiot grandkid is his only legacy. It got quiet real fast in that courtroom. The judge didn't even need time to deliberate. Motion denied. Will upheld. Full inheritance remains with the beneficiary, me. You'd think that would be the end of it. But no. A few hours later, I got a call from my cousin. I didn't pick up, but he left a voicemail. In it, he just said, "You think this makes you better than us? You'll always be the family freak." I saved that voicemail. Not out of spite, just as a reminder. A reminder of who they are when they think they've lost control. I thought the hardest part would be walking away from people I spent my whole life trying to win over. But the truth? It felt like being let out of a cage I never knew I was in. They spent years treating me like garbage, and then tried to sue me for the trash bag. Every time they tried to paint me as selfish, the truth cut deeper. I was the only one who showed up when it mattered. I was the only one who listened. And in the end, I was the only one who didn't see Grandpa as a wallet. That hurt them more than any dollar amount ever could. Because deep down, they knew. They lost. Not just in court, but in life. After the court ruling, I didn't say a single word to them. No calls. No gloating texts. No, I told you so. Just silence. And it drove them insane. Over the next week, I got over 30 messages across email, phone, even LinkedIn. Some were angry. Some were fake apologetic. A few even tried to guilt trip me into giving a small percentage back to the family. One message from my mom simply said, "How could you do this to your own blood?" I stared at that one for a while. How could I do this? I didn't lock anyone out of family dinners. I didn't leave my kid homeless at 18. I didn't mock someone's existence as a failed abortion over pot roast. They wanted me to feel like the villain for finally getting something that wasn't stolen out from under me. But here's the truth they couldn't swallow. They were never my family. They were just people I happened to share DNA with. Real family doesn't need you to prove your worth. Real family doesn't turn your name into a punchline and then act confused when you stop laughing along. So I made a decision. I vanished from their world, deleted old numbers, changed my main email, moved out of my apartment and into the farmhouse, which I renovated piece by piece. The land was quiet, peaceful. You could actually hear the wind moving through the trees. First night there, I slept like a corpse. No dreams, no guilt, just stillness. I also quit my job, not in some dramatic fashion. I just left a resignation letter on my boss's desk with a 2-week notice and thanked him for the opportunity. I didn't need the paycheck anymore. What I needed was time. Time to breathe. Time to stop looking over my shoulder. Time to unlearn every warped thing my family ever made me believe about myself. I started small. A garden. Fixed up the Pontiac. Built a little bookshelf out of reclaimed wood. Took long walks without my phone. And it was during one of those walks that something hit me. I had no anger left. For years, I carried this huge, jagged boulder of resentment on my back. It shaped how I talked, how I moved, how I worked, how I loved. I thought getting revenge or making them feel what I felt would give me some sense of closure. But when I got it, when I had the house, the land, the legal win, the power, it didn't feel like revenge. It felt like freedom, because I wasn't living for them anymore. I wasn't trying to prove anything. I wasn't waiting for them to say sorry, or we were wrong, or you mattered after all. I had what I needed, proof that I wasn't the problem, and the silence to finally heal. One night, I lit a fire in the back field, brought out a cardboard box full of old letters, holiday cards where my name was misspelled, photos where I was cropped out. I burned every piece of it, watched the smoke rise into the dark sky, and felt nothing but peace. The next morning, I got one last package in the mail. No return address, but the handwriting was familiar, Nathan's. Inside was a flash drive and a note. For what it's worth, I'm sorry. I didn't know how bad it really was. I was so busy being the favorite, I didn't notice you were barely surviving. I don't expect you to forgive any of us, but I wanted you to see what I found. I almost threw it away. Almost. But curiosity won. I plugged it into my laptop, and opened the folder. Inside, a bunch of audio files, voice recordings, conversations from family dinners, some going back years. Recordings of my mom mocking me, my dad blaming me for their bills, my aunt calling me a parasite. All stuff I'd lived through, but somehow hearing it again, out loud, made it even more surreal. Even worse. He was right. He didn't notice. Because they never let him see what they did to me behind the curtain. I didn't reply, not out of hatred, but because the conversation was over. There was nothing more to say. I left the drive in a drawer and went back outside. My dog ran up with a stick. I threw it. The sun was setting. The air smelled like rain was coming. For the first time in my life, I was exactly where I was meant to be. They stopped trying after a while. The texts slowed down. The emails faded. Even the guilt trips dried up. It was like they finally accepted what I'd known since I was 15. I wasn't part of their story. And honestly, that was the gift. But something strange happens when the noise stops. When you're finally free, fully, completely, no strings, no explanations owed, you start asking bigger questions. Things like, what now? What do I actually want? It turns out, I didn't want to live out the rest of my days in some bitter victory lap. I didn't want to cling to the pain like it was all I had left. I'd done enough surviving. It was time to build something. So I did. I went back into Grandpa's old office, where he used to keep dusty ledgers and receipts folded neatly like origami. In the back of one drawer, I found a locked box with a single envelope inside. The handwriting was his. If you're reading this, it means you have a chance to do something I never could. Start over. Clean. With no one holding you down. This money wasn't meant to rot in bank accounts or be fought over by people who only cared after I was gone. It was meant to matter. Use it however you see fit. Just don't let it die in silence. That line stuck with me. Don't let it die in silence. So I didn't. I met with a lawyer, then an accountant, then a nonprofit consultant. And 6 months later, the Frank D. Callahan Youth Grant was born. It wasn't flashy. No ribbon cuttings or press releases. Just a private foundation built quietly, aimed at helping kids exactly like I was. The ones who got pushed out too early, told they weren't enough, left to sleep in cars and figure out life before they were even adults. I didn't put my name on it. Didn't tell a soul in the family. But the first time I saw a letter from a 19-year-old kid thanking the grant for giving him his first month of rent and a shot at a second chance, I broke down in my kitchen. Ugly crying. The kind where your chest shakes and your hands don't know what to do. Not out of sadness, but because I finally felt like I mattered. Not for what I inherited, not for what I'd survived, but for what I did with it. A year later, I mailed one final letter. No name, no return address, just a legal receipt and a single line handwritten across the bottom. It was addressed to my mother. Thank you for making sure I never felt safe enough to stay. Because if I had, I never would have become the man I am now. That was it. No revenge. No screaming matches. No final showdown. Just peace. The land is quiet now. The air feels lighter. The house no longer creaks like it's holding its breath. Sometimes I walk out to the backfield with my coffee and just listen. And every now and then, I imagine Grandpa sitting beside me, not saying a word, just nodding, like he always did, when something finally made sense. And that's the story. If you're still here, that means you're one of us. So go ahead, hit that subscribe button. I drop new chaos every single day, and trust me, tomorrow's story, it's even worse than this one.